Hello and welcome. You're watching Aviation Centimeter. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Now, France's Air Accident Investigation Agency, the BEA, will be joining India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau to probe the incident involving an Air India flight from Phuket to Delhi flight. Now, 17 passengers were injured on that flight after that flight suddenly lost altitude of about 300 feet mid-air on August 4th. Now, the aircraft carrying 137 passengers and 8 crew members subsequently stabilized and landed in New Delhi. The Civil Aviation Ministry officially classified it as a serious incident. Both flight crew members underwent the prescribed psychoactive substance screening test. The ministry said that the drug test of the pilot in command indicated a result requiring confirmatory testing. The samples have been sent to a designated lab and the final report is awaited. The DGCA has taken both pilots off the roster pending completion of this investigation and the prescribed process. The Airline Pilots Association of India has attributed the flight's sudden altitude to a triple hydraulic failure. ALPA has also urged against speculation over the pilot screening result, stressing that a preliminary screening is not proof of drug use and that conclusions should only be drawn after a confirmatory lab result is available. Now, with the technical investigation now underway, the focus will be on two key questions: what caused the aircraft to suddenly lose altitude and whether there is any link whatsoever between substance screening result and the incident in question. Joining us now to help us understand and unpack this developing story is with us Captain Sam Thomas, President of the Airline Pilots Association of India. Also with me, Sanjay Lazar, an aviation expert, and of course my colleague Madhya Mujawar, who's joining us live from the Mumbai studio. Madhya was the one who broke that story, that exclusive story right here on CNBC TV 18, that the French investigation agency, the BEA, will be investigating this with the AAIB. Captain Thomas, let me come to you first. The very fact that the French investigation agency is joining India as far as this investigation is concerned, the fact that potentially we could also have some engagement, some involvement of Airbus, what does that tell you as to that fall of 300 feet, if it is attributable to turbulence or to certain mechanical, technical issues?
Good evening. First of all, that turbulence part was just created by somebody, I don't know who that is, and it was never in question. And the whole media went to town with that for 3 days. And now it has been established from the report that was filed and Air India Department to DGCA that there was a hydraulic issue, multiple hydraulic issue. In fact, the readings clearly indicate that all three hydraulic systems have failed. Now, this is unprecedented. Nobody has ever even heard of it. Now, the issue that is happening is a lot of people are being asked, have you flown the A320? Can a triple hydraulic system failure happen? The resounding answer is no. But that's exactly like in 1912, you built a ship called Titanic and said it's unsinkable. And see where that ended up. When the A320 was made, it was clearly called the uncrashable plane. See where that ended up. So we are telling the media and the public at large that please wait before things and give us some time to react before we can gather all our information, and we've got this information directly from the source. So therefore, we say that the confirmatory fact for that is that the Airbus is joining. Unless it was a major issue, Airbus won't come down and join this particular investigation.
Right. Captain Thomas, absolutely. The fact that the French aircraft investigating agency is joining and they will also bring experts from Airbus also tells us a lot about the scale of this incident. But have you spoken to the pilots on that flight? Did you speak to the pilot in command? What makes you claim that this was a triple hydraulic failure? Because the AAIB is still investigating the flight data recording. So what is the basis of your claim?
Firstly, I'm not claiming, I'm asserting from the fact that, yes, I have spoken to the pilot in command, and the details furnished from the post-flight report to DGCA, which clearly indicates that at 0402 for a span of 6 seconds approximately, there has been complete hydraulic failure along with some associated failures. So, based on the post flight report that is printed from the aircraft, it clearly indicates there has been a triple hydraulic failure, momentarily at least.
All right. We also heard what the passengers said about what happened inside the aircraft for roughly 30 seconds. Does that match with what could have happened if there was a hydraulic failure? Passengers were hit, like some passengers got badly injured, crew was badly injured, people came out on stretchers from the aircraft. So what happens during an hydraulic failure, and how can the pilot then recover from that type of a failure?
Okay, triple hydraulic failure is really difficult to recover from. And what has happened in this particular case is a stall warning has come, autopilot has disconnected, and the pilot flying has pressed the nose down, which is the correct procedure. That has an issue with negative G. People who are not wearing their seat belts will be thrown to the roof. But uh, depending on the severity of the pitch down attitude of the airplane. Now, the systems themselves have recovered. That's what people are not understanding. The system themselves have recovered, and only investigation will tell us whether it was a spurious warning, or because the pilot is not allowed to speculate whether it's spurious or not. Every warning that has come has to be taken seriously, and the relevant checklists have to be followed. That's exactly what they've done. Now, as far as the passengers are concerned, it's a traumatic experience. You even had a passenger saying that the aircraft was flying inverted for a while, which is far from the truth, but we don't blame them. When you are in a traumatic situation, things like this will go through your mind, and particularly with concussion injuries to the head.
Exactly what I wanted to ask Captain Thomas, that some passengers did complain that they felt that the aircraft flipped. Is that possible on a passenger plane?
Uh, if you want to flip an airplane on a passenger type aircraft, yes, it's possible, but it didn't happen in this particular case.
I'm,
It just lost.
what I wanted to ask is, if a plane had to flip, is it possible for the cockpit crew to recover from that situation and land the plane safely?
It's a very speculative this one. Sometimes, if the structure does not fail, we do that sometimes in the simulator. We invert the airplane and do things when you have free time. But if the structure doesn't, well, more often than not, the structure fails. If it doesn't fail, there will be significant damage to the aircraft. But maybe it's a very speculative thing. And in real life, I don't know of many cases. I mean, there have been a few cases of a private jet recently, a year back, that went through a complete inverted flight from a wake turbulence incident. So beyond that, this particular aircraft, no, I don't think it's possible.
Sure. Captain Thomas, the other big issue, of course, you're asserting, you're not claiming is what you say, you're asserting that this was a technical failure. The other issue that, of course, we have been speaking of and have been talking about has been the psychoactive substance test. Now, tell us, what is the difference between a positive result, a non-negative result, and can there be other reasons for a non-negative result other than perhaps recreational use of certain drugs?
I can't authoritatively say on what the non-negative clearly indicates that they have not got a conclusive proof on if there is a banned substance or not, and a recheck is required. Now that's the report as far as this particular pilot is concerned. And contrary to popular belief, every pilot has to undergo the psychoactive substances check. In addition, there are random checks being conducted on pilots, 10% of them, and so as to cover the entire population of pilots. We welcome that move. It's just that in India, the use of over-the-counter drugs is very prevalent. We all have done it. When you have a cold, you take an antihistamine. When you have fever, you take a Dolo 650. Now, in certain cases, even these drugs do come out as banned substances in the dope test. So it does not mean that he is a junkie who was flying your airplane. So we need to wait for the conclusive test to come back. And there is a civil aviation requirement which takes care of pilots grounded due psychoactive substances, and that would be followed.
Sure. Also coming to you, Mr. Lazar. Mr. Lazar, on that same issue of psychoactive substance tests, what is the frequency of that? Are pilots required to undergo that before and after each and every flight? Also importantly, if it can be induced by medically prescribed drugs, is there a requirement that falls on the shoulders to actually declare that to the airline and to the proper authorities?
Thank you, Ashmit. Just one point before Madhya asked Captain Sam Thomas about aircraft flipping. I know this aircraft didn't, but I just want to point out to you in 1955, Captain Tex has done a barrel roll on a 707. So it's technically possible. Number two, yes, this triple engine hydraulic has been a triple hydraulic failure was spoken about over the last 2 days, and it was quite prevalent. So one wonders why this theory of cat was being circulated when on the 4th itself a DGCA report was sent calling it a suspected transient technical fault. I'm quoting from the report. Now, coming to your point about psychoactive and psychotropic substances, Ashmit, yes, it is possible there are certain bodybuilding drugs or steroids or tablets that you take for building muscle mass and things like that that do give you a false positive in such a test. There are also some medical prescriptive drugs for depression, antidepressants, or moods. What's it called? Antihistamines and things like that, which will indicate in such a test. Now, it is incumbent on the pilot or the crew member to indicate to the medical professional at the airline that they have been prescribed this drug A, drug B, or drug C, and it's recorded. Of course, we do also know that a lot of people self-prescribe themselves. Everybody's a Google doctor today, unfortunately, and sometimes we end up taking stuff that may not be in line with what is prescribed by the law as far as operation of these tests are concerned. But let's also remember we've had number of false positives when we had the breathalyzer. People who sprayed perfume were actually punished for being under the influence of alcohol. I know of some people who FIRs were filed against them. So I think we need to go slow. Let's wait for the second test. And also after the second test, I'm, stressing precaution to everybody that let us have an analysis of what that test says. Whether it is, talking about a pilot who's, who doped himself or took cocaine, or whether it was a couple of, bodybuilding drugs or antidepressants that caused this positive thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm very sorry. I'm very happy to note that BEA is joining. It shows the seriousness of the situation. I also want to point out this is not a serious incident. It must be treated as an accident. There are still 4 cabin crew members in the hospital as of today. And as per ICAO Annexure 13, this should have been treated as an accident. There is a difference in the definition.
Right. Right. Mr. Lazar, I think the fact that the AAIB got involved since day one, we understand that it was the AAIB that told the airport authorities at the airport to collect the samples of the cockpit crew. And that is how it is suggested that the AAIB was involved in the investigation right from the beginning, and that is why it also becomes an accident since the AAIB is probing it. But coming to the psychoactive substance...
Sorry. Please read the PIB statement. It calls it a serious incident.
I know.
That's the distinction I'm trying to make in law.
Yeah. The Civil Aviation Ministry did call it a serious incident. It did classify the occurrence as a serious incident. But the fact that AAIB got involved and now the French investigators are involved, and we understand that Airbus and other stakeholders could also join the probe. So that also suggests that it is a serious accident that AAIB will now probe. But coming to your comments on the psychoactive substance test, does it indicate, or how long, if it was a medicine or a drug, how long does it stay in the urine? Because the urine sample is what came positive. So how long does it stay generally in the blood sample or the urine sample?
Madhya, frankly, I'm not a doctor, but I will tell you that I know because I was involved when the car was being issued. And I do believe that in the blood, it stays the least. In the urine, it stays up to, from 7 days to up to 30 days. In the hair, it's, and body cells, it stays much longer. Now, in the case of a a medical tablet or something like that, or the impact of a medical, a dolo or a antihistamine would probably go away in 7 to 10 days. Whereas if you are, a regular drug user, it's going to stay in your system for much longer. I also want to tell you, through my cursory inquiries with doctors in the last 48 hours, I found out that at this point when they do the test, they can then break it down and identify from which chemical formulation the positive came from. So I'm certain at some point they will do that. Maria?
Indeed, I'd like to thank both of our panelists, Captain Thomas, Mr. Lazar, for joining us. Again, both our panelists, they're insisting on the need for patience at this point and to await, of course, the final results of that confirmatory test, which is, of course, awaited. The labs undergoing that test. And, of course, Madia's exclusive news break as well, that the French Investigation Authority, BEA, will also be partnering in this investigation. On that note, let's slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, the government, in a parliamentary reply, has said that there is no general policy barring airport operators from owning stakes in scheduled airlines. The clarification comes days after reports suggested that the Adani Group was seeking a waiver to enter the airline business. We discuss that and more on the other side. Welcome back to News Center. Now, the government has said that there is no general policy that bars airport operators from owning stakes in scheduled airlines. In a written reply to a question from the Member of Parliament, John Brittas, the Civil Aviation Ministry has said that there is no government policy that generally restricts operators of major airports from holding substantial equity or operating scheduled airlines. Now, this comes days after reports suggested that the Adani Group was seeking a waiver to enter the airline business. However, the ministry noted that certain airport concession agreements do contain restrictions on such cross-ownership. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Civil Aviation confirmed that the Airports Authority of India has received a letter from the Adani Group seeking a waiver from contractual restrictions that could clear the way for its entry into the airline business. The government, however, is yet to examine this request. The development is significant for the Adani Group. Meanwhile, Bengal MP Mahua Moitra had alleged on X that the group was lying to stock exchanges, referring to what she described as a June 4th letter from Adani to the AAI seeking a waiver from restrictions under the 2006 Airport Privatization Agreement. However, in July 24th communication to the BSC and the NSE, Adani Enterprises denied reports that it was planning to launch an airline. Well, joining us now to help us understand this story as it unfolds is with us aviation expert Sanjay Lazar. Also with us, Rajani Associates, Prem Rajani, joining us live as well. Mr. Rajani, let me come to you before I head to Mr. Lazar. Just give us a perspective. The government clarifying that as far as this cross-holding framework is concerned, it is reviewing. The Airports Authority is reviewing these requests for waivers that have come its way. Tell us, from the law of the land, the way it exists, is there any mechanism, is there any procedure that empowers the Airports Authority to grant such waivers, or will it be ad hoc, case-by-case decision?
I personally believe this would be more of a general waiver, not on a case-by-case basis, because it just cannot be tailor-made for one or two bidders. It should be done across board for the benefit of all the players in the market. So I believe the government will make a general waiver or amend the law if need be, because though they say there is no restriction, but if there is one, they can give a clarification and make suitable amendment to the particular policy.
Mr. Rajani, do you see, is there a possibility of any conflict of interest here if airport operators who control effectively everything at the airport, from slots and gates, and if they had to start an airline, the fear that we've been hearing for the last 1 month is about conflict of interest. Do you see any possibility of conflict of interest here?
It's a very interesting point, because keep aside for a moment aviation. Many of the sectors like power generation and many of the road, everybody has a conflict of interest to a certain extent. But truly speaking, the law is well legislated. I think as a person, I would say, what are the three important factors when it comes to a same owner of the airport and the same promoters owning the aviation? So long as you're able to have a policy in place which ensures that there is a systematic and no priority landing rights or takeoff rights, and there's no priority of gate allocation to the owner of the airlines, who also owns the airport, and there's a proper arm's length relationship. I believe there should be no harm, because that is exactly what we do for banks giving loans to their group companies at times, and so long. Likewise for the power generation and infrastructure company. So why create a blockage for one sector, which is the need of the hour also?
Sure. Let me take that question across to Mr. Lazar. Mr. Lazar, historically, though not by way of a government policy, but through these individual agreements, there has been historically a 10% equity cap from airlines enjoying a stake in the airport operators. That's, of course, to ensure that the airlines don't have some kind of conflict in terms of getting beneficial treatment at a specific airport. Have we reached that stage? Has the aviation market evolved to a point, matured to a point where those safeguards are no longer needed, perhaps?
Well, Ashwin, thank you. I mean, I have very strong views on this because of my historicity with the subject. Allow me to take you back a few years. I do not know if you recollect, in the same government, 2019, the Tata Group had signed a note sheet with the GMR Group to buy 49% of that company through various holding companies and the Singapore government. And they went ahead, and then there were objections. They were forced to scale back, and they came back to 15%. And then there were more objections. They were asked to come under 10%. Otherwise, the Tatas would have literally owned half of GMR today. Delhi Airport, Hyderabad Airport, go. And they were asked to stay out of it because they owned a stake in Vistara and AirAsia at that time. Now, the Tatas, of course, walked away from the airport business completely. Now we have a case where airport operator, subsidiary of the Adani Group, has written to the government, to the AAI, asking for a waiver on the OMDA. Now, this is very specific. The OMDA is between, for Mumbai Airport, there's a separate OMDA. For Delhi Airport, there is a separate OMDA. For Bangalore, each airport has a different one. The government's larger policy says 10%. In each of these OMDAs, there is a restriction on that airline operator or airport operator from taking a larger opening an airline. Now they sought a waiver for future. If you read the letter, it clearly states that for future they would like a waiver, and if possible for this. That is because there is a rumor that they're constructing aircraft. They may want to get into an airline business. Now let's evaluate this from a larger perspective. Step back a little bit. Today, out of all of India's airports, 50% is run and managed by two companies, GMR and Adani Group. That means there's a duopoly in the airport operations. 90% of our aviation market is also run by two companies, which is Air India, literally, and Indigo. There is a duopoly there. Now, are we moving towards, now this has got nothing to do with, A operator or B operator. The entire ecosystem is owned by one company, from airports, aircraft manufacturing, training, pilot airports, you name the entire thing. Now, is this something that's going to benefit the market? And is it going to benefit the passenger? I'm looking at it purely from a passenger point of view. If one airport operator operates an airline, is he going to give us cheaper fares? You're intending to break a duopoly. Are you breaking the duopoly? Now, please listen to what Mr. Mohal said in Parliament today. I read through. He's made a distinction, and very cleverly, and I must compliment the government for this. They've actually not spoken about the OMDAs. They have actually said they've carved out a differentiation, that we do not refer to those agreements. We refer to others. There is no bar on an airport company starting an airline, period. But OMDAs will apply. Now, that will have to be looked at very closely. I'm sure there are some airlines that oppose, some airlines that support
Right,
it.
Mr. Lazar. Right, Mr. Lazar, clearly a developing issue. We'll, of course, keep coming back to you, to the experts, to get the latest insights on how this journey is progressing. I'd like to thank my colleague Madhya, as well as both of our panelists, Mr. Lazar, Mr. Adani, for joining us with their insight. But that, unfortunately, is all the time that we have. It's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates will continue right here.